Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 286 for the 13th of April 2014. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. And yes, it's World Homeopathy Awareness Week. Are you aware, my friends, are you aware of homeopathy? Well, if you listen to this show, I guess you probably are. We're going to start with the press release from Australian Skeptics, including quotes from, well, me, about the recent National Health and Medical Research Council draft information paper on the effectiveness of homeopathy. In fact, a lot of the show concerns this draft paper. Needless to say, the draft paper came down heavily against homeopathy. No good evidence to suggest it actually works, but we go into that. After that press release, we have a guest read, as it were. Lauren Cochrane, the president of Canberra Skeptics, is going to read the information from a new website, Homeopathy Awareness Week. Very good information there. This is from the UK. I think you'll enjoy it. After that, we have a clip from The Project. The Project is a wonderful TV show here in Australia on the 10 network. It's on every weeknight. I can recommend it. Dr Rachie appears on The Project from time to time, and this is a short debate between Professor John Dwyer and Australian Homeopathic Association's Anna Lamaro. I think you'll find it educational. After that, it's an opinion piece written by Dr Ken Harvey. We can't have it both ways on homeopathy. And after that, another guest read by Joe Alabaster with news on the Better Health Channel's website that was promoting homeopathy. I mentioned it last week. And finally, to wrap up our homeopathy section, I read the press release from Homeopathy Plus. Well, why not listen to what the other side have to say about this whole affair? Following that, it's a week in science from our good friends at the Royal Institution of Australia, where you can buy your homeopathic beer, www.riaus.org.au. I really enjoy a week in science, and judging by your correspondence, so do you. And to round off the show, Dr. Rachie reports, Dr. Rachel Dunlop, with a look into a recent study into acupuncture in the emergency room in hospitals. Sort of a study. Well, you'll find out more at the end of the show. Oh, I wish, folks, I wish I was in Manchester at the moment. As I record this, lots of weary skeptics are waking up for day 2 of QED, Question, Explore, Discover. A wonderful conference, wonderful skeptical conference there in Manchester. I know lots of my friends are there, including Susan Gerbeck from Guerrilla Skepticism and Iran Sergev, part-time reporter for the Skeptic Zone. He's there running about with his microphone, pretending to be Maynard, I guess, and he's going to be sending lots of good interviews from people attending QED. Looking forward to that. Now, before we get stuck into the show, a couple of announcements. Those people living in Brisbane or in Queensland, or let's face it, anywhere in Australia, Brisbane Skeptic Camp. Brisbane Skeptic Camp will be held on the 19th of July at Hamilton Town Hall. Skeptic Camp is always a good time no matter where it is, and you can find more about Brisbane Skeptic Camp at brizskepticamp.org or just Google Brisbane Skeptic Camp, 19th of July. And another group of people doing some good work and know how to have fun, the Canberra Skeptics. Oh yes, Canberra Skeptics. If you live in the Canberra, the Australian Capital Territory area, Google Canberra Skeptics or visit canberraskeptics.org.au. They have frequent free public talks and other social events. And not forgetting our friends in Victoria, the Victorian Skeptics, vicskeptics.wordpress.com. Also, lots of information there, public events. Visit their website if you live in the Melbourne area. But that's enough from me. It's time for me to run downstairs, make sure that there's still plenty of nice cat food for Fred, who was complaining the other day because I fed him chicken mince. Oh, big mistake. Oh, man. Oh, he let me know. Beef mince. Yes. He told me. I can read cat, you see. He looked at his bowl and said, Make sure I've got some beef mince for Fred the cat while you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Australian Skeptics media release published at www.skeptics.com.au, April the 9th, 2014. It's official. Homeopathy doesn't work. The National Health and Medical Research Council draft information on the effectiveness of homeopathy finds that, quote, there is no reliable evidence that homeopathy is effective for treating health conditions, end quote. This is the view that Australian skeptics have been propounding for some time and thus thoroughly endorses. Quote, it is especially timely during Homeopathy Awareness Week, due to start on the 10th of April, though the findings might not reflect the type of awareness that the homeopathy industry would want, end quote, said Skeptics President Richard Saunders. The NHMRC draft report, released on April 9, repeatedly says that studies claim to support the efficacy of homeopathy are unreliable, not good quality in terms of design and practice, or too few participants, or both. Quote, based on all the evidence considered, there were no health conditions for which there was a reliable evidence that homeopathy was effective, end quote, the report says. Quote, no good quality, well-designed studies with enough participants for a meaningful result reported either that homeopathy caused greater health improvements than a placebo or caused health improvements equal to those of other treatments, end quote. The draft report concludes that, point, people who chose homeopathy instead of proven conventional treatments may put their health at risk if safe and effective evidence-based treatments are rejected or delayed in favour of homeopathic treatment. Point. Homeopathy should not be used to treat health conditions that are serious or could become serious. Point. People who are considering whether to use homeopathy should first get advice from a health professional, GP, specialist, nurse practitioner, or pharmacist. Those who use homeopathy should tell their health professionals and should keep taking any conventional medicines that they have been prescribed. Professor Rob Morrison, Professorial Fellow in the School of Education at Flinders University in South Australia and Vice President of Friends of Science in Medicine, said that, quote, the draft paper is welcome if belated, as other advanced countries concerned about the useless treatments that waste taxpayers' money have long ago reached the same convincing conclusion that homeopathy is among them. Politicians agonise about the burgeoning costs of healthcare in Australia, and subscriptions to health funds are climbing out of the reach for many. You have to wonder why well-researched reports of this kind, which clearly distinguish between health treatments which work and those that don't, and which could save millions of dollars spent on useless treatments, are so few and far between. The report might also have included a section to show that, if homeopathy actually did work, the well-established scientific validity principles of chemistry, physics, physiology, and pharmacology must all be wrong, end quote. Saunders added that, quote, for many years we have pointed out the problems with the evidence for homeopathy, and despite the best efforts of homeopathy boosters, the practice remains one area where we can say with confidence that good evidence just does not exist, end quote. In 2012, the Skeptics issued its annual Bent Spoon Award to the Homeopathy Plus organisation and its founder Fran Sheffield for continued promotion of some of the most ludicrous claims of an already ludicrous product. Australia's consumer watchdog, the ACCC, described some of those claims regarding homeopathic treatment of whooping cough as misleading and deceptive. The NHMRC says it is, quote, concerned that unconventional products and procedures are often promoted to improve people's health where there is little or no evidence of their benefit, except for the benefits people experience when they believe that the treatment is effective, the placebo effect. Sometimes patients may be misled into rejecting practices and treatments that are proven to be effective, end quote. Some of the conditions that proponents of homeopathy claim can be treated include HIV infection, ADHD, asthma, depression, acute trauma, malaria, or even heroin addiction. For none of these conditions, as well as many others, did the NHMRC find any reliable supporting evidence that homeopathic treatment was any better than placebo, or that the evidence wasn't even good enough to make that claim? Saunders said that, quote, overall, the NHMRC draft report supports the view held by Australian skeptics and by skeptics groups around the world for many years. It just doesn't work, end quote. Quote, we therefore affirm and support the findings, and we encourage the various related government bodies to act on the findings accordingly. Our aim is to see the public protected from misleading claims. Hopefully, this draft report is one positive step in that direction, end quote. The NHMRC is also looking into the funding of complementary medicine through the government's support of health funds, and this report on homeopathy should feed into that. Professor John Dwyer, Emeritus Professor of Medicine at the University of New South Wales and President of Friends of Science and Medicine, said that, quote, homeopathic preparations should not be available in our pharmacies, no private health insurer should provide any rebate for homeopathy, and those few universities that lower our scientific standards by providing credibility for homeopathy in their health courses should cease doing so immediately. Australians can save more than 8 million precious health care dollars a year by accepting the advice in this report. We await now for the Chief Medical Officer's report to government on a range of other unscientific modalities that are likely to be assessed as being equally useless. It is more important than ever that credible scientific evidence of clinical effectiveness underpins our delivery of healthcare. End quote.
This is Lauren Cochrane, President of Canberra Skeptics. From homeopathy-awareness-week.org, Homeopathy Awareness Week takes place internationally from April 10 to 16 and is aimed at raising awareness of homeopathic remedies. Each year, homeopaths from around the world use this week to promote their practice and gain publicity, yet public awareness of the realities of homeopathy remain low. For example, many people mistakenly believe homeopathic products are a form of herbal product, not realising that homeopathic products typically contain no active ingredients at all. Over 2 centuries ago, the first homeopaths perversely decided that diluting an active medicinal ingredient makes it more potent, with the vast majority of remedies containing nothing at all. Modern homeopathic tablets are generally 100% sugar, containing no active ingredient whatsoever. As part of World Homeopathy Awareness Week, we would like to raise awareness of 12 key points about homeopathy. 1. In 2010, the UK Government Science and Technology Committee analysed the research into homeopathy and concluded that homeopathic products perform no better than placebos. This conclusion was backed up this week in a review by the Australian National Health and Medical Research Council. With many homeopaths claiming their pills can treat serious illnesses, homeopathy is a dangerous placebo. 2. When Penelope Dingle chose to take the advice of her homeopath husband and treat her rectal cancer with homeopathic remedies, the results were tragic. Her death was, according to the coroner, the result of being influenced by misinformation and bad science. There are real dangers in using homeopathy in place of real medicine. 3. Homeopathy is big business. The homeopathic industry is highly profitable for companies like Boiron, Weleda and Nelson's. The UK homeopathic market is estimated at £213 million per year, comparable to the US, France and Germany. All of this for treatments which have not yet been proven to be any more effective than placebo. 4. In 2010, the NHS spent around £4 million on homeopathy. This money could instead be spent providing effective treatments, vital surgery and additional nursing staff. With NHS budgets under increasing pressure, wasting money by giving sugar pills to the sick is unjustifiable. According to the 2010 UK Government Science and Technology Committee, the government should stop allowing the funding of homeopathy on the NHS. 5. In 2012, Boiron settled a class action lawsuit over their popular oscilloscoconum homeopathic remedy for cold and flu. Boiron claimed that the remedy is made from the heart and liver of a single duck. Given that the ultra-dilute remedy contains nothing at all of the original duck and generates over $20 million worth of revenue, it has to be the ultimate quack remedy. 6. Even now, groups such as Homeopaths Without Borders are currently offering ineffective homeopathic treatments in the developing world. Other homeopathy charities are known to dispense sugar pills to treat AIDS and the Ebola virus. Some of these groups are even promoted to the website of the World Homeopathy Awareness Organization. 7. In 2011, 1,700 people in 30 countries around the world took part in an international protest, each taking an overdose of dozens of homeopathic pills to demonstrate that these worthless pills have no effect and should not be sold as medicine. 8. If only homeopathy is used, even relatively commonplace ailments can lead to severe consequences. Gloria Thomas was 9 months old when her parents chose to treat her eczema exclusively with homeopathy. When she was finally admitted to hospital, she had developed sepsis and died shortly after admission. Her parents' confidence and faith in homeopathy ultimately led to this tragedy, and they were subsequently jailed for manslaughter. 9. In 2006, a Newsnight investigation revealed that homeopaths told undercover reporters that homeopathic preparations could be used to prevent malaria. This advice was roundly condemned as dangerous and potentially life-threatening. Nevertheless, homeopaths still claim to treat malaria. The list of people harmed by choosing homeopathy instead of seeking out real medicine is continually growing. 10. The Advertising Standards Authority has received over 150 complaints of false advertising and misleading claims made by homeopaths. Homeopathic bodies seem unwilling or unable to stop their members making unsubstantiated claims. 11. Many homeopaths regularly discourage conventional vaccination, instead promoting no-sodes. These ineffective homeopathic vaccines put children at risk of diseases such as measles, mumps, rubella, and whooping cough. 12. Patients have been warned against using homeopathy by the House of Commons, the British Medical Association, the NHS and the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Northern Ireland. Mark Walport, Chief Scientific Advisor to the government, surmised homeopathic treatments were nonsense with absolutely no medical benefit, echoing the sentiments of the UK's Chief Medical Officer. It's clear that leading medical experts agree. Homeopathy simply does not work and should not be used.
We wanted to get the full picture on this, so we're talking to homeopath Anna Lamaro and immunologist Professor John Dwyer. John, homeopaths claim that not all the evidence has been reviewed. Is this report really based on solid evidence?
Eminent specialists, all of whom are experts in studying clinical trials and research papers, who've spent 2 years studying more than 400 papers and have come to the same conclusion that homeopathy is a sham. There's absolutely nothing, no wriggle room in this decision and this conclusion by the National Health and Medical Research Council. There is no credible scientific evidence that homeopathy helps any health condition.
John, can I ask you one question? From a psychosomatic point of view, if using homeopathy makes you feel good, isn't it in some way effective?
Well, of course, the placebo effect makes one feel good, short-term only, of course. But when homeopaths suggest that they have a preparation that can, say, treat whooping cough, a very serious illness, or that they have vaccinations for things like HIV and TB and malaria, which scientific medicine can't say that. These are very serious claims, and if people were to rely on them and think they were being protected, and many parents did think that they were protecting their children with homeopathic vaccines, that's dangerous. But above all that, it's clearly unethical to just prescribe a placebo and pretend and fool a person into thinking that you're giving them an active medicine that might help them.
I take exception, absolutely, to being cast in this mode of fooling people by prescribing something that's merely placebo. I've been in practice for 34 years, and I can promise you that I've never prescribed a placebo. Let's come to the placebo effect. We wish devoutly that the NHMRC had bothered to look at the laboratory evidence and also the veterinary studies, both of which are placebo-free zones. And the veterinary studies, there are 57 valid studies which show positively for homeopathy and a vast range of laboratory studies. The lab bench is a placebo-free zone.
Well, Dad, let me tell Anna that she's never prescribed anything but a placebo. And that's the fact. A first-year high school's chemistry student could look at the principles of homeopathy and know that it's non-science, it's ridiculous.
John, I'm afraid you're out of your
the prescribing of
comfort zone here.
placebos, I'm very much in my comfort zone, but for the viewer, there is no evidence that any homeopathic preparation has any active ingredients that help people with their health.
It's because we're talking beyond the molecular level. We're talking about preparations that have an effect beyond the molecular level.
No, but there is no such thing.
Well, be that as it may, I'm sure that homeopathy, having survived 200 years of, in fact, highly oppositional public court, will survive beyond this, and clients and patients will continue to make a choice for homeopathy.
Anna, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, and thank you, John, as well.
Thank you, John, and thank you all.
Published on the 10th of April 2014 by Ken Harvey, as reported on the Drum website from the ABC broadcaster in Australia. We can't have it both ways on homeopathy. This isn't the first time homeopathy has been debunked, but the verdict of Australia's peak health research body has implications for discredited academic degrees and health insurance subsidies, writes Ken Harvey. The National Health and Medical Research Council, NHMRC, has released a draft information paper titled Evidence on the Effectiveness of Homeopathy for Treating Health Conditions. Homeopathy is a 200-year-old alternative medicine practice. It has two core beliefs that are impossible to reconcile with modern scientific knowledge. The first is that like cures like. That is, substances that cause symptoms in healthy people have the ability to treat people with similar symptoms when administered in minute amounts. Thus, if a patient is complaining of difficulty sleeping, a homeopath might prescribe coffee prepared according to the homeopathic principles. The second belief is that serial dilution and shaking the remedy, potentization or dynamization, releases immaterial and spiritual powers, therefore making the substance more active. Homeopaths believe that they can treat a broad range of acute and chronic conditions in all patients of all ages, including pregnant women, mothers, fathers, babies, young children, teenagers, and the elderly. However, based on all the evidence considered, the NHMRC concluded that there was no health conditions for which there was reliable evidence that homeopathy was effective. The conclusion is similar to that of the 2010 UK House of Commons Science and Technology Select Committee, which also looked at the scientific evidence and stated, quote, "In our view, the symptomatic reviews and meta-analysis conclusively demonstrates that homeopathic products perform no better than placebos," end quote. So why did the NHMRC commission their own report? The NHMRC has been concerned about reports of non-evidence-based complementary or alternative medicine being used in place of evidence-based treatments for patients with serious but treatable conditions. The preventable deaths of Penelope Dingle and Gloria Thomas provide two examples. In addition, the NHMRC was asked to assist the Department of Health with a review of whether natural therapy should continue to receive an Australian government rebate on private health insurance. The purpose of the review is to ensure that taxpayer funds paid through the rebate subsidise only natural therapies that are underpinned with a credible evidence base. Homeopathy is one of a number of natural therapies for which many private health insurance funds provide an auxiliary, extra, cover, and for which the government provides a 20 to 40% rebate. The ancillary benefits provided by different funds are currently a commercial decision. They take no account of clinical effectiveness and vary widely with respect to the services covered and the maximum money refunded per service per person per year. While natural therapies only provide a relatively small proportion, 6.5%, of all ancillary benefits paid, they are growing at a much greater rate than other services. For example, between September 2000 and September 2013, the number of dental services funded doubled, whereas natural therapy services increased ninefold. A Natural Therapies Review Advisory Committee has been set up to review the findings of the NHMRC and provide advice to the government as to which therapies should continue to attract a rebate. Given the NHMRC's report on homeopathy, it seems unlikely that homeopathy will continue to attract a rebate after the 1st of April 2015, the date that changes are expected to be implemented. The NHMRC report is also likely to impact on other areas. A number of natural health colleges offer degrees and diplomas in homeopathy. For example, the Endeavour College of Natural Health notes that its Bachelor of Health Science, homeopathy, is, quote, accredited through the Office of Higher Education, and as such, students are entitled to the federal government's Fee Help scheme, which is similar to the HECS system and open to any Australian citizen undertaking a degree, end quote. If one arm of government states that homeopathy lacks an evidence base, should another accredit homeopathy courses and assist with student fees? Naturopaths may also have to reconsider their treatment methods, one of which is homeopathy. Indeed, a number of other diagnostic and treatment modalities used by naturopaths are in the scope of the government review and are currently being evaluated by the NHMRC, including iridology, reflexology, and herbalism. A survey of general practitioner referral and practice in rural and regional New South Wales, published in 2013, shows that only 0.5% of 600 respondent GPs had prescribed homeopathy in the last 12 months, and only 8.5% referred patients for homeopathic treatment over the same period. Nearly two-thirds of GPs reported that they would not refer a patient for homeopathy under any circumstances. It will be interesting to see if the NHMRC report changes such patterns. In the UK, homeopathic prescriptions have undergone a steep decline in the past 15 years. Pharmacists who sell homeopathic remedies such as the Brower product range may also need to have a rethink, especially as the Pharmacy Board Code of Conduct includes, quote, providing treatment options based on the best available information and not influenced by financial gains or incentives, end quote. Companies who provide homeopathic remedies may also have to update their professional educational information. Finally, recognizing that patients often don't inform their doctors about the complementary medicines they are taking, and doctors don't often ask, the NHMRC has also produced another useful document, Talking with Your Patients About Complementary Medicine. While intended to be a resource for clinicians, it is equally valuable for patients and the general public. Dr Ken Harvey is an adjunct associate professor at the School of Public Health and Preventable Medicine, Monash University. He represents the Consumer Health Forum on the Natural Therapies Review Advisory Committee.
Hello, this is Jo Alabaster. Last week you heard Richard Saunders mention that the Better Health channel was promoting World Homeopathy Awareness Week on the events section of their website. Homeopathy was being associated with men's health issues, including prostate cancer. The Better Health channel, fully funded by the state government of Victoria, describes itself as a provider of, quote, health and medical information that is quality assured, reliable, up to date, easy to understand, regularly reviewed and locally relevant, end quote. I've actually used their website many times as I've found their fact sheets on medical conditions to be accurate and accessible. In fact, I've linked to them repeatedly from my blog at evidenceplease.net when discussing vaccine-preventable diseases. I know of many people, both healthcare professionals and lay people, who regard Better Health Channel highly and refer others to their website. Unfortunately, there is an aspect to Better Health Channel that advocates of evidence-based medicine are not entirely happy with. Some of their pages on alternative medicine are rather uncritical in tone. Often written in conjunction with professional associations of alt-med practitioners, descriptions of alternative therapies are provided with no mention of efficacy, or even whether the mechanisms they're based on are all that plausible. I'm looking at you, naturopathy, with your vitalism and invisible life force. As a government-funded website which is trusted and relied upon, I think that the Better Health Channel can and should do better. World Homeopathy Awareness Week is upon us, and this year skeptics are again very much embracing the opportunity to spread awareness that homeopathy is bulldust. One evening last week I was curious as to whether any events were occurring here in Australia to promote awareness of homeopathy, either being run by its proponents or its critics. In doing a Google search, I was incredibly disappointed to find that on the first page of results, there was a link to Better Health Channel's website. On their events page was a listing for World Homeopathy Awareness Week, which read, quote, Event, World Homeopathy Awareness Week 2014. Organisation, World Homeopathy Awareness Organisation. Description. This year's theme for World Homeopathy Awareness Week from 10 to 16th April 2014 is men's health. For this theme, we are thinking of the typical men's health problems such as impotency, erection problems, infertility, prostate problems, prostatitis, prostate cancer, enlarged prostate. End quote. A government-sponsored website trusted by the public and medical professionals to provide reliable and accurate health information was promoting an event which suggested that homeopathy had a place in the treatment of men's health issues, including cancer. Not happy. Fortunately, there are actions that members of the public can take when we come across potentially dangerous misinformation published by those in a position of responsibility, especially when they're government-funded. The Better Health Channel has a feedback form at the bottom of their page. They also have a Twitter account and a Facebook page. Many people, myself included, have contacted the Better Health Channel in the past regarding their fact pages on alternative therapies. Form letter replies can be a little disheartening, particularly when no change seems to result. However, in the case of the World Homeopathy Awareness Week event listing, it was worth trying again. After sending the Better Health Channel some quick and polite feedback expressing my disappointment that they would promote World Homeopathy Awareness Week, I began chatting with friends and fellow skeptics. The Skeptics in Australia Facebook page was a fantastic way to reach many people who found the event listing concerning, as was utilising Twitter. A mention from the Skeptic Zone podcast helped get the word out to a significant number of people as well. In a wonderful case of good timing, the NHMRC's draft information paper on homeopathy was released later that evening, garnering more public support and awareness of homeopathy's lack of efficacy. People wrote to the Better Health Channel, tweeted using their Twitter handle, posted on their Facebook page. Others wrote directly to the Victorian Health Minister's office to express their concerns. A few days later, which happened to be the first day of World Homeopathy Awareness Week, some very heartening news arrived. I received an email from the Better Health Channel thanking me for my feedback and stating that, quote, complementary and alternative medicines have high use amongst health consumers in Australia. In publishing BHC information on CAM, we recognise the need to address a range of health concerns and questions of interest to visitors to our site. Our aim is to provide the public with suitable information about CAM without, in any sense, promoting it as a replacement for conventional medicine or endorsing all of the claims made by the many different streams within the field. The BHC event calendar is an information resource, and the placement of an event in the BHC calendar is not an endorsement or recommendation for that event. Events submitted in our event calendar are for information only. We do reserve the right to moderate and remove events, and in light of the recent considerations, we have decided to remove the event from our health events calendar. Well, kudos to the Better Health Channel for coming down on the side of evidence-based medicine. I'm also pleased to report that Better Health Channel are currently reviewing the contents of their homeopathy fact page, which many people also expressed concern about when contacting them, both directly and via social media. In an email to me about the review, they have written, quote, as part of each review, we aim to take into account the current research/findings, and we'll be looking at the NHMRC's draft information paper in this case. End quote. The Better Health Channel's new homeopathy fact sheet will certainly be something to look out for. In the interim, though, the immediate result of a group of people writing letters and taking to social media has been fantastic. The Better Health channel is now no longer promoting an event that suggests that a non-evidence-based practice has a place in the treatment of men's health issues. While the removal of the event is merely a drop in the ocean of raising public awareness that homeopathy is bulldust, unlike an active ingredient within a homeopathic dilution, the results of our skeptical activism are detectable and can make a difference.
And now the views from Homeopathy Plus. Homeopathy Plus, don't forget, won the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award in 2012. From homeopathyplus.com.au. No evidence or poor methodology. The NHMRC Homeopathy Draft Report, April 2014. The National Health and Medical Research Council, NHMRC, released its revised draft document, Evidence on the Effectiveness of Homeopathy for Treating Health Conditions, on April 9, 2014. It states in part, quote, "There is no reliable evidence that homeopathy is effective for treating health conditions," end quote. The worldwide homeopathic community is both dismayed but unsurprised by the report, as the NHMRC working group was compromised from its inception by failing to have at least one qualified homeopath on its panel, though several suitable candidates were presented. Different principles underpin studies and practice. When examining the NHMRC draft report, it is important to realise that homeopathy is practised by very different principles to those of conventional medicine. In drawing its conclusions on homeopathy, the NHMRC overlooks studies based on these principles and clinical practice in favour of less suitable studies that focused on isolated disease conditions, studies much more suited to the allopathic, conventional, model of treatment. This alone has had a negative impact on the NHMRC findings. AHA recommends a more comprehensive approach. To overcome this problem, the Australian Homeopathic Association has recommended that the NHMRC take a, quote, more comprehensive approach, end quote, in its analysis of homeopathy, so that evidence for its effectiveness is more easily identified and studied. ATMS says no evidence of ineffectiveness. The Australian Traditional Medical Society, ATMS, says the draft report has no compelling evidence of a lack of effectiveness with homeopathy, just a lack of high-quality studies. They call on the federal government to support and fund these studies, just as it does for other therapies. The ATMS advises it has already provided numerous examples of studies in which homeopathy is superior to placebo to the Chief Medical Officer, and says that, to place the report in context, only 30% of all conventional medical procedures are supported by a strong evidence base, according to the British Medical Journal. Prophylactic and other studies excluded. A significant amount of evidence for the effectiveness of homeopathy has been lost by the NHMRC exclusion of homeopathic prophylactic studies, some of the largest observational studies ever conducted. The NHMRC also says it will not accept studies on, quote, the use of homeopathy for preventing health conditions, including homeopathic vaccines, or whether homeopathy maintains and or enhances general health, as part of its call for further submissions. As these studies provide some of the clearest evidence of homeopathy's effectiveness, the question must be asked, why are they, along with animal studies, being excluded? At what cost? The NHMRC draft report has been more than 3 years in the making, and so far, according to reports, has cost the taxpayer $140,000. All the more reason to ensure its integrity. But is that all this report will cost? According to the World Health Organization, homeopathy is the most widely used alternative medicine in the world today, and second only to conventional medicine. Many millions of people rely on it as a primary form of healthcare. And they know it works. The NHMRC continues to exclude important evidence from its examination, and if it chooses to word its final report in such a way that it has been used to discredit homeopathy and disenfranchise Australian users of homeopathy, the greatest cost of all will be borne by the Australian government, the scientific community, and the NHMRC itself. Trust lost is never easily regained, and that is what is truly at stake with this report. Call for submissions. The NHMRC is now calling for final public submissions and comment on the draft information paper. Anyone can make a submission of additional evidence. It does not have to come from within Australia. The deadline closes on Monday, 26th of May 2014.
Раз, два, три, четыре.
Друзья, меня зовут Кирилл Алферов, и я основатель общества скептиков. Мы зовем вас на наши встречи, которые проходят каждые 2 недели в Москве, и также приглашаем послушать наш подкаст, который выходит каждую неделю. Подкаст называется «Скептик», а сайт, на котором вы можете узнать о нашей деятельности, это www.skepticsociety.ru. Hey everybody, my name is Kirill, and I'm the founder of Skeptic Society Russia. Come visit us in Moscow in our bi-weekly meetings, and also listen to our weekly podcast, which is called Skeptic. And the site where you can find all of that is skepticsociety.ru.
Welcome to a week in science from RI Oz, bringing you the science you need to know. 7 billion is a lot of anything, let alone people, but that's what our population hit in 2011. So how do we compare to other species, and what does this mean for our planet? Let's begin by putting these sorts of numbers into perspective. How do humans rank against other populations in the world? By far and away, the most populous species are bacteria. There are around 4 quadrillion of them, and this easily outnumbers all other animal populations combined. Moving on to larger beings, there's an estimated 10 billion ants in the world, weighing almost 10 times that of humans. Who counted them? I have no idea. And who would have thought there are more than 20 billion domestic chickens bred for meat and eggs? It's hardly surprising, but it is interesting that the top 10 mammal populations are humans and our domesticated friends. Farming livestock has seen populations of cattle and sheep soar to over 1 billion each. And pets like cats and dogs are around 500 million each, thanks to living closely with humans. But who is number one? Well, it's hard to work out. Evidence suggests, though, that humans may only be third on the list following mice and rats, which are not strictly domesticated but do like to hang around humans. By comparison, most wild mammal populations are falling rapidly due to humans moving in on their habitats. There are just 500,000 elephants, 200,000 chimpanzees, 120,000 big cats, and 20,000 polar bears left. And yes, we're directly responsible. And now, 4 fast facts about global population. China has the biggest population in the world with 1.35 billion people, closely followed by India at 1.21 billion. Together, they're home to 37% of the world's population. The highest population growth rate ever recorded was in 1963 and the lowest during 2011. It took 123 years to grow from 1 to 2 billion people, but it took just 13 years to grow from 6 to 7 billion. Finally, the current world population is about 7.19 billion, increasing by 2.3 people every second. The planet is expected to hit 8 billion people in 2024. That's it for this week in science. For more information on global population, go to the RI Oz website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter at RI Oz and like us on Facebook. I'm Tania Meyer, and we'll catch you next week.
The Skeptic magazine, the journal from Australian Skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian Skeptics.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello listeners and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. Well, this week I'm reporting on a news item that announced the results of a Melbourne acupuncture study, proclaiming in the headline that acupuncture is as effective as drugs in treating pain, trial shows. So the article begins with, an acupuncture trial in 4 emergency departments in Melbourne has found it is just as good as drugs in relieving lower back pain and that from sprained ankles and migraines. Emergency physicians at the Alfred, Northern, Cabrini and Epworth hospitals partnered with the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology's School of Health Sciences to see if acupuncture could relieve acute pain in hundreds of patients presenting to hospital with either lower back pain, sprained ankles or migraines. Okay, sounds good, right? But then there's this. While data from the study is still being analysed and finalised for publication in a medical journal, one of the researchers, Dr. Michael Ben-Meir, said it showed acupuncture offered the same level of pain relief as analgesic drugs when patients rated their pain 1 hour after treatment. Whoa. Wait a second. Let's go back there to see what this says again. Did I just read this right? While data from the study is still being analysed and finalised for publication? So it's not even been published yet, and the data is still being analysed, and the researchers are going to the media to talk about their results? What the actual? Why are these researchers apparently alerting the media to their findings when they haven't even passed peer review? Well, I have a few ideas on why this might be, which I'll get to in a minute. But firstly, it's obviously difficult, nay, impossible, to critique the findings effectively in lieu of a paper. However, I did find a detailed description published on a trials website which outlines the methodology. And it describes 3 treatment groups. 1, standard pharmaceutical care alone, and this included a range of analgesics, including endone, Panadine Forte, Voltaren and Valium. 2, acupuncture alone. Group 3, a combination of acupuncture with standard pharmaceutical care combined. Well, the trouble with acupuncture is it's hard to blind people to the treatment, so researchers sometimes use what's known as sham acupuncture. This means that needles are still used, but they're either inserted in the wrong place, i.e. not along the magical meridian lines, or they are not inserted far enough to have an apparent effect. This way, the researchers can control whether the acupuncture is having a real effect or if it's a placebo effect. Since it's not indicated if sham acupuncture was used here, there's no way to determine whether the effect from the acupuncture was real or placebo. So patients reported they felt as much pain relief from acupuncture after 1 hour as they did on painkillers. Well, sure, but we can't draw any conclusions from this without an acupuncture control group. Pain, as everyone is well aware, is extremely subjective and therefore highly susceptible to placebo. Plus, people often feel better after 1 hour of treatment anyway. It's because they've been in hospital and they've been attended to. They've been looked after. They've had a doctor take care of them. Of course, they feel better. Without effective blinding of these treatments, there's simply no way to tell if this effect is real. And in addition, as listeners are probably well aware, the placebo effect is a curious beast. The more invasive a procedure, the stronger the placebo can be. So you can imagine having needles stuck in you is likely to make you think your pain has reduced as much or even more than if you took a tiny white aspirin. Another issue with this study being not blinded is it may have selected for patients who are sympathetic to the efficacy of acupuncture. So if you turn up to the accident and emergency department and someone says, do you want to be in an acupuncture trial? If you're me, you'll say, no, thank you very much. Please get me some real drugs. But if you're somebody who is sympathetic to acupuncture or believes in acupuncture, then you're more likely to say yes. This will then also influence the pain perception of these people. If you believe it, then it probably works. We also must consider the role of wanting to please the nice doctor. Patients may report a reduction in pain, later found to be the equivalent of analgesics as reported. However, this is questionable because they have been fussed over and may be taken to a private room to lie down and relax. All of these things can introduce confounding variables into studies, which is why controls are critical. The appropriate controls were simply not used here, making these findings pretty much worthless. So this is part of the reason why I think this study has not been published yet, all of which leads me back to why it's been announced in the press and not in the pages of peer review. I suspect this study might not pass peer review without sham controls. Also odd is that the Research Data Australia website says the trial began in 2008 and was due for completion in 2011. So why have the results not been published yet? Is it because they likely won't be? This would be a very big worry for the researchers, especially given that the National Health and Medical Research Council gave these guys $416,301 to conduct this trial. Even more of a worry, though, is the researchers' apparent disregard for the Australian Code for the Responsible Conduct of Research. Section 4.2.1 says discussing research findings in the public arena should not occur until the findings have been tested through peer review. In discussing the outcomes of a research project, special care should be taken to explain the status of the project, for example, whether it is still in progress or has been finalised. So in this particular article, it was made clear that these findings have not been published and are still being analysed. However, several days later, one of the lead researchers from this study went on radio in New South Wales and did not make it clear that this study has not been published. I'm all for the systematic investigation of complementary and alternative medicine, including traditional Chinese medicine. But in order to get any meaningful results, we must do this with correctly designed clinical trials. In this case, the horse has bolted. People will now think that acupuncture works just as well for pain relief as analgesics. And this constitutes bad practice and bad science, in my opinion. You can find 3 blog posts related to this piece on the official blog of the Skeptic Zone at skepticsbook.com. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Podcast Science is an award-winning weekly science show in French hosted by a bunch of crazy enthusiasts. We are convinced that the greatest ideas in science are quite easy to grasp as long as they are presented with passion, using a vocabulary common to all curious minds, whatever their academic background, if any. You don't understand French yet? Well, it's never too late. All our stories have a written transcript on the website, and people from all around the world are using our content to learn Molière's language. Our topics range from 0 to infinity, from evolution to artificial life, from electromagnetism to the science of introverts. We just love mathematics, science, critical thinking. So do you? Want to join? You can subscribe to the podcast for free from our website, podcastscience.fm, that's in one word. You also find us on iTunes and SoundCloud. See you soon, hopefully. Hâte de vous accueillir. À bientôt sur Podcast Science.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Yes, coming up in the next weeks, I imagine, as soon as I can get my hands on them, reports from Iran Segev interviewing people at the wonderful QED convention in Manchester in the UK. Oh, I hope he had time to talk to Dr. Richard Wiseman. What a fine fellow he is. What an interesting man. But I'm sure lots of good interviews are coming our way. I happen to notice also that right now in the Czech Republic, in this little city of Olomouc, is the AFO, the Olomouc Science Film Festival, which I attended last year. And if anybody's listening who's attending that festival, all the best. It's a wonderful festival to be at, and I was so pleased to be there last year. In fact, our friend Dr. Bashir Saab, the man who's trying to go to Mars, he's there at the film festival this year. Hi, Besh. Hope you're having a great time. But for now, for this week, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.